Okay, so I'm Zack. Hello, everybody. Nice to see so many new people here today. I'm going to be talking about the Supernode 1 refresh plan. So Supernode 1 is, let's see, yes. It's this building that's in downtown Manhattan. It's on Pearl Street. And, about 8 years ago, it was one of the first really major locations for the mesh. So it's a 175 meter tall building. Anyway, it's very tall. It's the Verizon building as you look downtown by the bridge. And it's called Supernode 1 because it was our first Supernode. So the first one that had fiber optics, that had our own IP addresses, and it was largely funded by a grant from the Internet Society. So we're very thankful for that. And this is the graph from a couple days ago, or the map. We can see that a large part of Chinatown, Little Italy, Lower East Side, and some of Williamsburg are connected via Supernode 1. So it's quite an important building in our system. If we look back, it was deployed between October and January 2016 and 2017. We had to redo some of the antennas in 2017, so there was some work to do there. We also added more antennas in 2018, and then in both 2019 and 2023, we did some maintenance, meaning like climbed up and moved some antennas around in a severe manner. But really, it hasn't been touched much at all, and the stuff that was done in 2023 was really minor. So it's aged a bit, and its node number in the old node numbering system is 227. So it's actually prior to the new numbering system, and now we're up to what, I don't know, 20-something thousand, or quite a bit. So it was 20,000 nodes ago. So it does things the way that it used to be done, right? This is how it looked in 2016. On the top of this building, there's this metal scaffolding, and people attach their antennas to it. And you can see that there's pretty much nothing there. And we were in this top corner with this gray circle around it. That was our antenna up there. So we were one of the first ones on the tower at all. So it was pretty bare at that time. We also have downstairs around the end of 2016, we have this spot, this cabinet location where you can see also it's completely empty, and we had one thing in there, and that was it. So I looked back through my phone to find these pictures. And then in 2017, we kind of moved things around, and you can see there's a few more antennas. We really just completed the installation, and there's only one giant antenna for us there, and a really dumb one that doesn't work. And then in 2019, here's a new picture, and really all of the antennas in this top square, are our antennas. And there's actually 2 or 3 more than this. But you can see we have 2 60 gigahertz, a triple sector, 2 horns, an AF24, and now we have another horn up here. So we have really like 7 antennas or 8 antennas up there, 7 antennas, I think. And so the building itself gave this diagram to me recently. I'll show you why in a second, but we have what they consider this top corner. And in the way things used to work, you used to rent the whole square. And it's been a long time since that's been true. So now you rent by the square foot, and it's changed over the years many times. So this is the diagram of the north face, and then off to the left is the other side, the left-hand side. I'm not sure, no, it's east, right? So this is north, and then that's wrapping around to the east. And so we're this top corner on the northeast corner. So what's the problem with Supernode 1? Well, from our infrastructure, one of the problem is that we only have dual 1 gig copper lines to the roof from our rack downstairs. And for those of you who have deployed hubs, you really know that we don't do it that way anymore. We do a DC cable and fiber. But this is way before that. One of the reasons that this is a negative is because the copper cables will degrade over time. The connectors will get water in them. And it's been like 8 years since those cables were run. We also don't do a DC power supply. We have dual PoE injectors. So the whole site is run off of PoE injectors, which are super hot because they're on 24/7 since 8 years. And we lost one, and I replaced it. But we could lose them anytime now, and they're 100% used. As I mentioned, the cables are aged. We've actually, Brian and I have gone up there several times to replace cables because the clips come out and they get corroded, and it's not a good situation. We also have an S16. This is a certain rooftop switch. We replaced it already one time. It's probably to be due to replace again, and it's hard to get them. So, this is a risky part for us. Overall, the site is hard to maintain because it's really difficult to climb up there. It's really difficult to work on, and it's quite aged. Additionally, the large 3 by 30 degree antenna, that really big one you saw, it has one bad radio in it. We've already swapped it out once, but that's a hard thing to swap out, and it's on an old frequency plan, which isn't really used anymore. So we're really limited on at least one of our sectors. We can't put anyone new on it, so it doesn't really do us much good. The last thing from our infrastructure is that the upstream, we used to have since it was our original kind of important site, we had a fiber internet connection there. But that internet connection isn't actually serving us today anymore. And there was some problems with it a few months ago. It went offline. It took a few months for the vendor to help fix it. And at this point, we've already moved everything to all of our other supernodes, which have 40 times more capability than this one node. So that's quite a bit of an increase. And switching back to this one node, switching back to getting internet out of this site, will actually degrade the quality of everyone's experience overall. So that's not great. Related to that, we're actually paying over $500 a month just for the fiber that goes from our rack to wherever the internet is. And other locations, we either pay $0 or $150. So we're actually, and this is fine. This is how this building used to work. And but we've moved on, and we don't need to pay that much money anymore for such a slow connection. On the building sides, their infrastructure, the antenna array, that metal scaffolding, is completely full, almost completely full. And our location, which originally was completely empty, and they were willing to do whatever we wanted, it's now 4 to 5 times higher in price. Like, that's a very expensive spot. You can get thousands of dollars a month for that location, many thousands of dollars, and we're not paying that much. Also, our lease is expired. You can say, how did this happen? Well, it's quite complicated in this building to renew your lease. They weren't very willing in certain years to really renew the lease. To the next point, the ownership relationship has changed quite a bit. There were periods where we weren't really even allowed to go on the roof. There were periods where we should have had to hire union contractors or third parties to do the work for us. And other times we just didn't have any information about what we could do in the building. And now we're in a good time where they're allowing us to go on the rooftop again. So it's just, the relationship has changed. Also, based on recent changes, we're now allowed to do some more things, like we're allowed to go to different spots on the antenna array we weren't allowed before. We have access to what's now called the 34th floor. There's a new floor with another cabinet space. We're allowed to dig around in the conduits to the roof. We weren't allowed to do that before. So things have changed where, we kind of, meaning I kind of, ignored this problem for a long time because there wasn't a good solution and we were going to get screwed. So what is the plan? And this is not a real plan because this is being worked on right now, but I think the flavor of the plan we need to do is find a less desirable, from their perspective, location, a free spot on the north side between other antennas, something that they can't sell to someone else and are willing to give us at an extreme discount, right? Remove any unused antennas, which is about 3 antennas, and replace that giant yellow on the diagram, but giant white box antenna with updated horn antennas like we do everywhere else, right? So move on to the latest standard. Also, replace our AF24 with either another newer AF24 we have in the box, so refresh us, or an exciting development, possibly. These giant blue circles on the east in the middle of the screen, those are disused Ciclu antennas. And Ciclu is a very expensive and fancy brand of antenna. And they may be willing to let us have them if we can, move them out and do this whole swap. So this whole swap is this space is so valuable to them that they're willing to kind of find a way to make it work and get us a good connection, right? That's also, thinking back to the internet, if we only have 1 gigabit there and we only have a couple antennas that are pretty slow, and then one AF24, we can't even use the whole internet connection anyway. So, this might get us a big speed bump at Supernode 1 as well. The last thing we're going to need to do, the last two things are, there's proposal that we should just move our equipment to a cabinet that is mounted on the outside of the building. So mount like a cabinet kind of like this one on the top right, put it somewhere on the roof with a small kind of like vertical rack inside, a small air conditioner on the side, kind of like cell sites do. We can put it on the roof, attach it to the scaffolding in an out of the way area. They'll give us AC power on the roof. And so we don't have to worry about PoE or fiber or anything else like that. So the plan would look something like this. If you consider all of our elements, we have a connection to meet me room, we have structured cabling, we have riser, we have a rack, we have power, we have roof space, we have an S6, and we pay for each of these elements separately, right? So there's actually a cost to this whole thing. So it might look like this. We might choose a location like that new location, the blue. We might deploy a new panel and power, and then move over some antennas. We might buy a new antenna, move the SSID, and then turn one antenna off and turn one antenna on. See if we can make sure we get it right, and then repeat that, and then take the antenna down, put the new one up, move the SSID over, repeat until necessary, until done, including two new ones to replace the existing yellow bar antenna. We would then either move our AF24 or move and replace it with a new AF24, or just take the blue antenna. But in any case, it would live on the blue location, which is a less desirable location on the east, but it will definitely hit Grand Street. There's no problem, right? So for us, it won't make any difference, and for them, we're supposedly clearing up very valuable space, right? And then just decommission basically everything else, and we'll be sitting live on the new panel with new antennas in 2 locations on the roof. The cost is not budgeted yet, because now we have this thing where we ask for a budget. So, if we can, I think it'll be about $4,000 or so. This is okay because once every couple of years, it's a very important site. $1,000 a year or $500 a year for a very important site is probably okay. We need to do outdoor enclosure. There's piping. There's going to be some costs of the building to do AC wiring. We need to buy at least 1 or 2 no-horn antennas, a new router, new PoE switch, new UPS. So basically, we should just replace all the infrastructure because everything there is, except for a few items, everything there is very old. This will reduce our bill by about $800 a month, I hope. However, because prices are 4 or 5 times higher now, we're going to end up increasing our price, so it'll be about cost neutral, I think, right? Which sounds kind of silly, but they're going to try and give us a deal. Plus, it's more expensive. Plus, we're removing a bunch, so I hope that it's going to be within a little bit of what we have now. Reasonable markup is okay, I think. In terms of performance, Supernode 1 has been with not the best performance for quite a long time. I think that's something we can probably all agree on. We've never really achieved more than 700 megabits because the routers are slow and the fiber is long and there's a bunch of things, plus the antennas are not the best. They were good, 8 years ago, but it's aged. Half or 2 out of the 5 antennas have really not been performing well for quite a long time. Replacing them with good ones and making sure that we have a good layout should get us all up to, I hope, near the 300 megabits per antenna or so. And refreshing the AF24 will either provide a lot more stability because once in a while that one goes down, or getting a 2 gigabit plus CICLU would be nice, and then we can support it from here. So this is all a plus. There's no negatives to this angle. Involvement, another plus. I would like to ask the maintenance team to help do this work, right? Please, because of a lot of reasons. One, it's good to share the knowledge and get others to have the experience on this. This is a good opportunity to do that. It wasn't this way prior on this SN1 site because there wasn't a maintenance team, right? And also, it's honestly quite challenging to climb this building. I think we have people who have the skills now, but a long time ago, that was not the case. Also, we didn't, the building didn't just allow anyone to go up there. So, and there's still a lot of rules. You have to have the right harnesses and gear and stuff like that. But we have people who can do that now. We also should maintain it like other sites. We should perform regular visits and so on. These are things we can all agree on. Debate whether we did this on purpose or not, but it's just really, honestly, the building is very hard to maintain and go to. Standardizing Supernode 1 on current hardware, we never had a standard prior to Supernode 1 because it was the first thing, but life has moved on, and we should treat it like a regular large hub, right? Like a Vernon or something like that. Also, we're finally allowed to. So let's get people who are, other sites like Vernon or wherever else, have people visiting regularly, and there's 10, 12 people who know how to get in there and do things, right? So let's exercise that activity. Let's get people there regularly on the rooftop, asking via tickets to get in, et cetera, and then we'll have that. And I'm not really able to do this anymore as much, so I'd like to pass the torch to the team to make it happen so it's not just me. Right? So questions and answers, when? Soon. We're talking about the building right now. Brian and I visited the building last week. I got an email from them today. It's happening right now. How can I get involved? Once we figure out, or I figure out with the building salespeople what's going on, what offer they can do, we're pushing back and forth different things, then I would like to make like an architecture meeting, and we can go over it and see if anyone has different comments, and we can find what kind of parts of materials we want to get. We can all discuss. So I think that's probably the best way to get involved. Why don't we just keep fiber at Supernode 1? Well, it's a couple of reasons. I mentioned it over the whole time, but just to make it clear, it's a little complicated to split our internet 3 ways. We split it 2 ways already. 3 is a little more challenging. It also would be quite costly to deploy more bandwidth at this location. So we're still looking at that $800 a month plus markup to be able to do this for very low bandwidth. The building has also changed their pricing on that, so it actually will be more. We also are not going to really have that much bandwidth from that building. In the current paradigm, we have, less than a gigabit or around a gigabit of access off the roof. But if we even had a CICLU, it would connect here, which is already 40 gig enabled. So we're not really helping ourselves very much by doing that. So it's not, I think it's better to have it as a reflector, as a regular hub, rather than Supernode. So at this point. So that's all. Other questions or comments? Yep. Oh, there's a lot of people here. Okay. A lot of questions.
Do we know what the frequencies are for the CICLU pair that are used? Okay.
Not yet. We have some. We'll find out, and if it doesn't work, then we'll have to figure it out. Yeah. It's early for that decision.
If it's no longer a Supernode, do we keep calling it Supernode 1?
I don't know. That's a debate. Yeah. I mean, there's things that are hard in computers, and one is naming. So, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know.
This is probably a no, but is there any opportunity to put a sector on like the south or some other weird locations they're not using currently?
Yes. So because the building has a lot of free space on the tower still, I don't have the whole thing up there, but we definitely could put something on the south or anywhere else. It costs, right? So it's not going to be free or maybe even cheap. The south is the whole building has a bit of a view issue. So in the north, the view is really beautiful. It's like Manhattan, right? To the east, the reason the east is so empty, even though Brooklyn's on the east, is there's a wall in the way of the scaffolding. So if you're there, you basically can't see most of the middle of Brooklyn, but you can see south. But then as you turn south, there's a whole bunch of skyscrapers, right? So there's a very narrow view to the south. It's not popular, but we can definitely get into Brooklyn. But do remember, it's going to cost, several $100s per month for an antenna up there, but we could do something on the south if we wanted to. Yeah. Cool. I mentioned it when we were on the roof last week, and the guy said, yeah, sure. Just it's going to be, maybe not full price, but it'll be, we're going to charge you for it.
Yeah. The one thing that I'm going to throw out on that is I feel like there's definitely an area of Red Hook that can't see SN3 and that has very minimal line of sight of SN3.
Yeah.
And kind of has no other way that can't see SN3 and can't see Grand Street. So south may be valuable for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one advantage that we have now in planning this over when, when you were doing it long ago, is that we have data on install requests, right? We can look and see
Yeah, I mean, we
who's
didn't.
interested in signing up.
We always wanted to do something on the south, but there wasn't anything there, so it was pretty hard to justify a south sector a long time ago. Yeah.
I don't know this building very much, but is there an opportunity to connect SN3 and Grant via this reflector, what do you call it?
To collect SN3, what do you mean?
To connect SN3 and Grant
connect?
via this building, as you call it, reflector.
Yeah, so we could make, on the south, there's a lot of options, right? It just costs money. So if we want to do on the south a point-to-point to SN3, we could. It's pretty far, so it's going to have to be a pretty decent antenna, but we could. And I expect that the Ciclu or AF24 will connect to Grand. So yeah, we could connect SN3 there. That said, we also have quite a bit of pretty expensive paths going from Grand to SN3 already. So I'm not sure that we need another one. But because it is such a high site, it would be nice to have more than one connection and of quality. So yeah, I'm open to it. I think it's a good idea. It's just we should think about how much we want to spend on it. Yeah. Anyone else?
Are there any members whose internet would go out?
I'll just repeat it. Go ahead.
Are there any users whose internet would go out in the event that this took longer than a couple of minutes to move over?
Yes, everyone. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people. But yeah, so the question is, would anyone's internet go out if this took longer than expected, right? Yes. But I think the idea is, and there's risk involved, right? Because we're moving the antennas from one side of the building to a different side of the building. So it's going to go over like 30, 40 feet. And the reason that we don't want to just completely move them is because there's, like 50 antennas aimed at this one spot, right? So we have to go visit everyone's roof and move all the antennas. I think this is probably close enough that it's not going to make a huge difference, but it could. And so we should, we should buy some new sectors, put them up, and then move the SSID over, check if the levels are the same, and we need to do some aiming, live to make sure that the existing downstream CPEs are still connected, right? So, but the idea is also if you do it live, you could just flip back to the other one if it didn't work out, right? But I think just for full transparency, I think we probably will lose a small number of sites, meaning we'll need to go visit them and update them somehow, right? If not for aiming, then maybe for frequency problems with the old frequency plan on the old Sector 1. Yeah.
Is there any way to let those members know ahead of time?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few really old light beams that we should update before we do this.
Good thing we have a lot of light beams. Yeah. Anyone else?
You got my question. I just wanted to say in support of the sector, I think Akash has some sort of contact on the Brooklyn Bridge Park. So that could be really cool to like connect the park. And that's also where I live, so get us up there.
Oh, on the south sector? Yeah, sure. Yeah, again, we can do these. It's a rooftop. They sell space, right? So we can buy antenna space all we want. It just costs. So if we can find, and we can do that later also. If we can find a reasonable desire to do it on the other side, especially now that, like we're in connection with the building, it should be good. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? All right.
Tonight I want to talk about our mission and which I think since we've got a lot of new people here, it's very good to go over this. And basically, as we scale up, we need to make sure we don't drift from our original mission. And I want to go over how we can remain true to the mission while we're scaling up. So the big initial ideas was to build an infrastructure commons to bring affordable internet to everyone, and to do this using a decentralized network and a decentralized organization. These are ideas that I got from Guifi. like 9 years ago, I did a lot of research into which community networks worked and which didn't. And after finding out that all of the ones in this country failed, I found this enormous network in Spain, Guifi. So I ended up copying a lot of those ideas. So a commons is an old idea. Like in England, they used to have commons where people could graze their sheep, and they were shared, and you know, or you could grow plants. The idea still exists, like on the Lower East Side and near where I live in the East Village, community gardens where you can grow a few vegetables, and this was this idea. It kind of died out, and it had some criticism, like you'll hear about the tragedy of the commons. And I think the tragedy of the commons was invented so people could destroy the commons and build businesses. But commons are a very stable way of doing things. There's commons that have lasted for like 1,000 years in fisheries, and the tragedy of the commons is a myth. And there's similar things like there's a Creative Commons and open source software. So yeah, the idea of the commons, it got revived a bit with this book by an economist, Eleanor Ostrom. And she exposed how the tragedy of the commons is a myth. And then she studied all of the things that go into longevity in a commons and the best way to govern the commons. So we have this license which you agree to when you join the Mesh, Network Commons license, and this is copied directly from Guifi. And it's basic, a lot of it's just sensible things about, you know, you don't want to ruin other people's connections or whatever. The main thing for me is that by joining the network, you agree to extend it. So that's how we grow. You join, your building joins the network, but we can then use that building to get to the next building. So we grow that way. And yeah, it's the most important part of the Commons license. So this is Guifi. It's in Catalonia in Spain, the northeast side of it. And it's huge. It's like, I think it's around 40,000 nodes now.
How much distance does it span?
Hundreds of miles, yeah. And it's a lot of it's fiber too. It was originally, it's a difference with Guifi to us is that we're kind of unique in being so urban. A lot of these community networks just start on farmland, and with fiber and farmland, it's easy because the farmers already have the equipment. They just dig up a trench, then you lay the fiber, and you don't have to ask anyone because you're providing the internet connection for the farmers. So that's how they started in a small town outside of Barcelona. I actually visited the town last year and met up with the person that started it. So there's a reason why Catalonia is good at doing this. They have hundreds of years of organizing, and they're always trying to secede from Spain. And yeah, so they're very good at doing community organizing, and it's very, they do it in this very decentralized way. So one thing that confuses people is like how are decisions made? Everyone, especially in this country, is used to a hierarchy, so they think that someone at the top must be making these decisions. And the way that they are made is you get into Slack. There's hundreds of channels in Slack and thousands of discussions going on in all the different threads, and that's where decisions are made. And you you basically come to a consensus with the people just in the thread. And it's because we're so mission driven and the decisions are mainly technology, you can usually agree on what makes sense and what doesn't. So there's also regional groups in Slack. So maybe someone wants to do something in Sunset Park, so there'll be other people that live in that area. And the decisions are made by the board. We had an election last year, and some people got very excited because this was their chance to get on the board and take control of the mesh and make us do sensible things. And the board meetings are very boring, and we don't really decide anything. This is a thing I just noticed, that we seem to have this network of trust, and Linux has it as well. I mean, Linux has a lot of problems with the way it's organized, but I like this idea, a network of trust, because it takes you, you have to get to know people, like at the meetups and working with them. Then this person's sensible, so we'll just let them go off and do this. And it's a gradual thing. You build up trust with people, and you get this network of trust that gets things done. We're strangely influential. Like, I think we're the most influential community network in the world now. There's some networks, like this one in South Africa, and there's one in Cuba and one in Lebanon, which might be bigger than us, but they don't even have a name. It's just how you get on the internet. In Cuba, you stick like a nano station on your rooftop and you send files to your neighbors. And in Lebanon, there's no name for the network. You just get on the internet by putting antennas on your roof. Wow. But none of these are not documented. We have a huge amount of documentation now. So, everyone around the world looks at our website and figures out how to do this stuff. So it's a great thing, and it's a big responsibility for us to keep the website updated. So there was a recent article by CNET that said we're the second largest network, so we can at least quote that. There's many people copy us, but they don't copy the main things, the commons and the decentralization. It's not optional. That you got to do those things. We were in an RFP, and there were four other networks in there, and they'd all copied us to some degree. Like, some were just direct copies. One of the people in the RFP, one of the organizations, stole some of our drawings and presented that to get the RFP. They got kicked out of Nature. And there's other networks that are VC driven, so they're just given lots of money without any clear business plan. But but I think a sustainable community network has to be done the way we're doing it. A litmus test, I think, if you're decentralized, you should be able to do it yourself. Like, and you can go on our website, you can read the instructions. Oh, I need this antenna. You can do everything just reading our website. We have to give you a network number, just a little number, and then you can connect. I don't know of any other network in the country that does that. I think we're getting the idea of mesh network is getting more and more important the way the world's going at the moment. We recently connected some asylum seekers at some Bridget School. It's just a few blocks from me. That's me crimping there. And there's hundreds of people in there, and they've got phones, but they've got no plan. So they got a useless phone and just a bit of Wi-Fi. They can get back on the phone and make calls and get on the internet. And at the very beginning, when, like, this is 8 years ago, there's one volunteer who was working with us, went off to help refugees in Greece, and another one went off to Syria to set up a mesh network there. And but this is happening in our country now. Like, we need it here. And mesh networks and the way our network works, if the internet gets shut down, we can still see and communicate with everyone on the mesh. And we should work more on this. It's a mesh services channel in Slack, which is dedicated to setting up services on the mesh network, which is independent from the internet. And internet shutdowns follow insurrections. So this is something we have to deal with in this country now, which is crazy. There was protests at City Hall. We set up a temporary Wi-Fi there. So, it's good. We can set this up really quickly. We just aim it at a hub, an existing hub, the light beam, and we've got an Omni antenna there for Wi-Fi. So we're scaling up pretty quickly. We're doing lots of new construction now, new buildings, and doing entire buildings before people move in. So it's important for us to stay, with the mission. So these are a list of things, terrible things that could happen to us. We don't want to become like a budget ISP. It's no purpose to that. There's other budget ISPs, and it'd be a horrible destiny. We don't want to become a typical nonprofit which spends all its money on. I was reading a breakdown. Most nonprofits spend like 70% of their money getting the money that they use, and it's only 10. It's only 10% of the money that they get donated that can be used. It's insane. Like, I think we spend an average of about $100 a year on marketing. Like, we just spend just a negligible amount on marketing, and we're just absurdly efficient compared to most nonprofits. We got to make sure we don't centralize the decision-making process. We don't want to make lots of rules, and it can happen where especially you have some bad players. You make up these list of rules because that's what the bad player did. He did all these just ridiculous things, and if you trust people, they usually don't do stupid things, and you don't really need all these rules. And when in the beginning, I was looking at co-ops and the way they work in this country, and there's a Park Slope food co-op that just spends so much time making up rules and debating, and they're just selling food. Like, why? It's such a simple thing they're doing, but they spend all their time with making lists of rules and debating. Very, very strange debates about foreign policies and stuff. They've got nothing to do with food. And a lot of, you'll find these abandoned community networks in New York City. There was a grant made, a huge organization satisfied the grant, and then they abandoned it because they've got the money, and they have no mission beyond satisfying grants. So there's one in Gowanus that's abandoned. I hope we get to take that over one day. But yeah, it's another non-profit thing where you're just satisfying grants instead of satisfying a mission. It's good to satisfy the grant requirements, but you got to, if we build something, we want to maintain it. We've got to make sure there's when we vote for board members, we don't vote for someone that wants to take it over. And we had an online Zoom with this guy, Alan Gunn from Aspiration Tech. That's his specialty, is helping organizations like us scale up. So we're going to have some more Zooms with him. And the other thing we've got to do is educate everyone about our mission. Thanks. So, any questions?
Let's see. Hi. Yeah, quick question about one of those last points about formalizing the structure. Are we saying that we should formalize the fact that we're unstructured, or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sick. Hell yeah, let's do it.
Anyone else?
I know there have been some conversations on Slack, or maybe even more informally than that, about how the website is structured and how the donations work and how payments work. So far, in my understanding, that's a pretty centralized decision-making process and not really subject to community feedback. Do you have any thoughts on how the community could, I guess, give feedback to the board about how those sorts of things work?
Well, Jason does the bookkeeping. And
Right, centralized. Very centralized.
Well, I don't know how to decentralize bookkeeping. Let me know. But there's a bookkeeping channel that's public, so you can ask any questions you want about the way payments work and how that works.
Would that be the place to affect a change?
Yeah. Yeah. What change are you thinking of?
Oh, there have been discussions about how buildings can get deals or how to fund community-based improvements. Say a block wants to improve their connection to a super hub, and they can get money returned to them the more installs they can get on their block, that sort of thing. There's never been any sort of policy in place to get that functioning, and as far as I'm aware, that's because that's a decision for the board to make.
No, it's not a decision for the board. We just discuss that in the channels, and we can decide in the channels.
Okay. Cool.
What do we think we can do in terms of, I think, one of the issues with with our current system of having, discussions in separate channels is that it's very hard for especially new people to the mesh to find those discussions, and it's it's certainly likely that there's discussions happening that people want to be included in, but they just never saw that discussion in the first place. What do you think we can do in terms of trying to make sure that people are, to help people find, other than just telling people to be more active on Slack, how do you think we can help people find kind of the stuff that they want to be part of?
Yeah, Slack is overwhelming, isn't it?
Especially starting out with so many channels.
Yeah.
Need like an aggregator or something.
Yeah, it does have really good search
Mm.
on Slack. That's how I get around on Slack, is searching for everything. But I miss out on things too. So
Yeah.
Everyone has that problem.
Yeah.
It might be good to have a summary somewhere of what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of like piggyback off that, wouldn't just maybe like an internal type of like traditional forum that's just like subject question, and then to kind of start that conversation via that instead of having just an endless scroll of a conversation? Isn't that kind of what you're looking for? I mean, just that's kind of the traditional sense, not to have a cross conversation.
Yeah, I feel like we're, obviously we're very kind of Slack is how we do our thing. But like kind of what I have in my head is like, okay, maybe we can try to build something where it's like, look, if someone's, someone is joining and we can tell they're in Greenpoint because of their address, maybe we should be trying to push them more towards because we have channels of like, we have an N/Greenpoint, N/Park Slope, N/Lower East Side. Like, we have a channel for each neighborhood, or if it doesn't exist, like, people can make it. But I think a lot of people who, we have a bunch of channels that when someone joins the Slack, we have a bunch of channels that people are thrown into automatically. But it's just kind of a matter of, how can we tailor that to make sure that they are getting put into the conversations in their area.
Kind of. Maybe an onboarding guide or a workflow that runs when someone joins Slack, suggesting here are the different channels you may be interested, or here's where you can dive in.
I think one of the bigger differences and nice things that happen a lot in Discord, another chat app, is that there are roles that people can typically sign up to right when they join one of them. And having something equivalent to those roles where they can get pings if they're interested in those roles when they sign up for them, I think would be like crucial for, people filtering all this, crazy amount of information that is being pumped through the messages. And it's, also makes it easier for people who are currently in the Slack to still keep up with conversation. You get a ping when there's something going on in Park Slope, right? So how do you bolt that onto the top of Slack? I don't know. There's maybe some Teams feature or something that you can get in there, or maybe some bot you can add. Who knows? Yeah.
But yeah, just adding off of that, Discord now have like a newer onboarding feature where like when a new user joins the Discord server, it's gonna ask you a list of questions like, are you this or that? And then when you click a response, it'll assign certain roles to you and add you to certain channels. Discord also has like channel like discovery things where you can just like scroll and then add yourself to channels. And another thing is that so I suppose sometimes it can be really hard to like find threads with activity. So perhaps maybe it's just a thought that there can be a bot that every day can like find the most active threads of the day, and then if it's not too noisy, pump it out to a channel and be like, this is today's like most hottest like threads. Anyone can have a look and join the discussion. Who did I give this to?
Yeah, can I make a comment as well? Just curious. So like it's definitely positive that all these other things have like Discord, et cetera, and forums and so on. And I like mailing lists. I'm a little old school in that sense. But like, we also need to make sure, because if the goal is community building and if the goal is to bring it all together, we have to make sure we don't split people into different areas too. That's like super important to keep everyone as much as possible in the same thing. And that's not like a decree from like a centralized authority, but it's like, well, it's common sense. You probably would want to have everyone, attending the same venue if possible, right? Also, there's like 6,500 people on Slack, so like moving them over is challenging, and getting people who are not familiar with things like that to move to yet another app, right? I know we all like switch our apps every day, right? Like, but not everyone likes to do that. Right? Yeah. So, also I wanted to comment on the centralized thing. Just kind of curious about the payments. Like, certainly there's room for improvement in payments, but remember, even though the goal of the organization is not to be centralized in any sense, some things can't really be very decentralized because they're like legal stuff, right? So like we can't have 20 nonprofits and then some people are part of all different ones and then keep the cash in members' bank accounts all over. Like we can't, it has to go into one place, right? Because that's like the legal requirement. So we still have to fulfill the ethical, moral, and legal requirements of the city and state and all that. So it doesn't mean that the decisions are made centrally. So if you think that there's a change in the payments, then you should discuss it with the people who do the payments. And like the same with bookkeeping. Like you could have people looking over all the bookkeeping, but like you can't have some things go into books over there and some into a different book. Like there has to be like one set of books, right? So yeah, I guess don't confuse decentralization with like hiding things, right? You can be centralized and open at the same time. Yeah. Is there a question over here, or should we give it to TJ for a second? Yeah.
Sorry, just to expand on the whole like finding things, onboarding like sort of point. I've been with the Mesh for a couple months now, and the thing that I've sort of learned about it is that it's very much like you get out of it what you put into it in terms of like community and volunteering and getting involved. So if you're somebody who's new, don't be afraid to just like jump in and understand that it's maybe going to take some time to actually like ramp up and sort of like get that ball rolling. And definitely don't be afraid to like reach out to people that you see being loud and be like, hey, I noticed that you're loud. Is there anything I can do? You know, is there anything that you're involved with that you need an extra hand in? You know, because as cool as it is to like solve these kinds of issues with like, you know, systems and automation and all that, right? I'm as a DevOps goblin, I'm very, very into that kind of thing. But also, you know, it's just, I definitely like encourage everyone to sort of like make that effort to like seek things out and like, you know, try to like, don't worry about how large and imposing the Slack may look. You know, just jump in and like, you know, just make connections at your leisure and, you know, like keep at it. Like it does take a bit to like get started, and just, you know, put in that work, I guess, as like a word of encouragement.
Another thing is non-technical people are really welcome. Like we kind of have an excess of technical people, so, and you can learn this. Like I knew nothing about networking starting out. Like I learned everything doing this. You know, just going on rooftops and crimping cables and things. Yeah, so, and it's also impossible to know everything about networking, like nobody does. So you can pick some specialty and become an expert on that one little thing really quickly.
I don't have any networking expertise in particular, but education is something that I'm interested in. If that's a place that I wanted to help to make outreach to non-technical in particular,
Yeah.
That's something I'd be interested in sort of finding a place in.
Yeah, we have an outreach channel, and we occasionally have community meetings here for the residents, and we should do one. We used to do install leader training. We haven't had one of those in a few years. We should get that going as well.
Thanks.
What's your name? Myra? Yeah, so to directly answer your question, I think before COVID, a lot of the non-org meetups were just at a bar and people who were not technical could come and ask questions. And those have kind of just turned into hack nights now. We don't really do, as far as I'm aware, we don't really go hang out at the bar anymore as often. Maybe I'm missing that. But I think that's maybe not super accessible to people who are not technical. And even these org meetings, some months have fewer presentations, and that might be a good opportunity to be like, hey, let's advertise that this is a good time for new people to come ask questions. Because as great as Slack is, I think it's not very information dense, and asking questions in person can be a lot faster to get someone ramped up on what Mesh is. It can also teach them like what questions to ask, right? I think if you get people subscribed to certain channels or whatever, it still requires them to know what they want to do ahead of time instead of being like, hey, we are open to all these things that we don't have a competency in. Please come help us. Like, and then on the other point about payments and stuff, I think a lot of that, like I'm not really clear on how we do payments for large buildings and stuff because I'm not involved in that. And I think documentation is the answer to that, unfortunately. Like just going through the process of being like, hey, we should write a doc on how we're gonna do whole building installs. We'll force it to go through many, many people. And by doing that, you will get implicit approval of that new process because people have to look at it and agree to it and write it and then publish it. And then you know what it is, right? Like we were talking over the weekend about like hosting things online versus hosting things on-prem, and that's a great process to formalize now that we have that. We have services that are running in the cloud. So yeah, those are my contributions.
Just one thing to add about like the meetups and stuff. Like I feel like one thing I learned about how the mesh works is that basically like, people kind of just like do things. So if you're interested in like having a meetup in like a bar or something, you should totally be empowered to just do that. Because when me and Andrew started doing the hack night thing, it's just like we just started meeting up every Tuesday, and then we did it for a long time, and now it's like a thing. But it's just like some random person deciding to do a thing. So yeah.
The beauty and
Actually, yeah, that is a really good point where like, you know, you should definitely feel empowered to like seriously do things yourself. especially like, meetups and organizing. Like I remember, we went to the Maker Faire, right? The Coney Island Maker Faire earlier this month, and there were people who were interested in getting connected to the mesh. And, some of these people were like, they had like either connections or they had a lot of time and energy to spend on this. And it was like, absolutely, like, heck yes, man. Like, go and like, get some neighbors together and go like lease some fiber. Like, seriously, that is a thing you can and should do. It's awesome. So, that's like sort of the level that we're talking about, where it's like, you can organize yourself and, make like move these huge projects forward. Like, absolutely feel empowered to do that.
We should probably move on to the next presentation.
I'll just say that the fact that it's community-owned infrastructure and not an ISP is something that can't be emphasized too much.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. So I don't know that I think I did like a limited demo of this, but I don't think it made it online. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about a tool I've been working on. So we're all familiar with the map, of course, from the website. And the map is really, really good at like, I want to geographically localize a node, and I want to understand how like geographic regions are connected to each other. But it's a little hard to reason about things like, oh, this node, right? What infrastructure does this node rely on in order to connect to the internet? That's kind of a hard question. You can kind of get there if you sort of know how the mesh works a little bit. You can kind of follow the lines, but that's not really what this map is set up to do. And I sort of set out to tackle that challenge. And the tool I built to do that is called Node Explorer. And so the way this is hosted on the mesh, it's hashtag mesh service. And the idea is that you can type in a node number or an IP address on the network, and you can see, how does this node connect to the nodes around it, and how does it connect to the internet? So this is actually my Omni up in Harlem. And you can see I hop around some Omni connections, and then we have a Lightbeam to 7800, which is the CCNY node, and then it has a VPN back to SN3. And so this is, and the idea is you can kind of click around and you can explore and you can see how, how things are connected. So you can see for the City College node, sort of all the clients that it has and how they are connected to each other. So this is like the sort of the basic functionality of the tool. And then what I've launched recently is the ability to analyze the impact of an outage. So the question actually was posed earlier today is like, what would happen if SN1 went offline? And again, that's a hard question to answer when you're just looking at this map. It's very hard to tell like which of these nodes are sort of dependent on SN1 and which ones, maybe some of them could reroute. And so that kind of a question can be answered using the feature here. So if we were to type in 227, which is the network number for SN1, and we let it compute for a second, we'll see some lists here. Well, there's a graphic, and so we'll see, okay, we selected 227, so of course it's going to be offline. And then there's a whole list of nodes here that are going to be impacted because of the outage, right? They have no other reroute to take. And there's another list here that is taken offline, or like takes another route, basically, to get to the internet. And then we can see a graphical representation of that as well. Ooh, that's quite blurry. But anything in red here basically is sort of taken totally offline, and anything in yellow has like another way to get out, basically. And this is like a sort of a total power outage, like everything is down at SN1. But then we can also do things like reason about link outages. So if we look at, say, my node in Harlem here, so if we were to punch in 238 to 7800, we could say that if this Lightbeam connection went down, right, so normally 240 connects through 238, right? So if the 238 to 7800 connection goes down, we can reroute through this other node. And we're both in yellow here because we have another backup. But if we take their connection down as well, so we can sort of reason about these things in aggregate. Oh, we already. Right, we can see that, oh, actually, you take down those two light beams, and now suddenly this cluster of nodes is completely offline. But the tool does understand actually that like even when this happens, these three nodes can still communicate with each other. So there's like a graphical understanding here. I want to get through the demo and then I'll questions at the end. Yeah. So then we could do as another thing, we could look at, so one of our most important sites is Vernon. So most of Brooklyn routes through Vernon. And so we could put in and say, oh, what happens if the power dies at Vernon? Who would be impacted? And this takes a second to compute because the impact is very large. But you know, and again, to look at the details of this is tricky. But in aggregate, we can see that like, okay, there's a couple of nodes around Vernon that are like on its sector antennas, right? And they're only on Vernon sector antennas. They don't have another way out. But then there's other nodes, you know, throughout Brooklyn that like sort of transitively depend on Vernon. So, right, so anyone connected to Saratoga through 1340 here, right? Because Saratoga uplinks through Vernon, they're not offline, but they're taking a different route because Vernon is offline. And so this is fun to play with. I encourage folks, anybody on the mesh can get this at andrew.mesh. And yeah, oh, one more here we can do is like, so the Grand to Vernon link right now, we have the sick loop that goes across the river, is not actually primary in use. It's not the lowest cost way to the internet for anybody. It's more of a backup for when there's rain and stuff, at least how we have it configured right now. And so we can punch in that link here, 5916 to 1934, and we can see, oh, nobody's affected, right? Because it's not carrying any traffic today, or not carrying any internet-bound traffic, I guess I should say. But for example, if we were to look at the link from Vernon to SN3, which is the primary uplink for everybody in, you know, in Brooklyn, we'd see lots of folks are affected, but nobody is taken offline, right? Because there's another way to go. And in this case, if we were to look here at like the other way it's going, we can see that there's an arrow in here that goes to Grand Street, right? And then so if the link to SN3 goes offline, everybody on Vernon can go via Grand to SN10. That's kind of what we're seeing here. But yes, I want to be quick. So yeah.
I'm not sure what the capabilities of this tool you're using are, but is there any way to get live data from our network into this tool so that it could be used as more of an outage detector for all of our members? And it can figure out when things are down and let people know automatically.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that's possible with the data that we have here. Oh, I guess I should mention as well, this is based on live data from the mesh. You know, if we had a rainstorm right now, this would take that into account in its predictions. So this pulls directly from the routing protocol that is used within the mesh to make decisions. And so this is always up to date to within about a minute.
Okay, and if we already have geolocations for each of these nodes, could we put them back on a map so you could explore geographically, and just so we have a tool we can just show to people and say, this is what our network looks like? And I think a lot more people would be impressed by that than just, we have a mesh network. It sounds like one person in a basement with a router.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certainly marketing benefits to explainability, and absolutely that's the kind of thing that's possible with this data. So, you know, this project is open source. Happy to take pull requests, happy to take issues. Yeah, if anyone's got suggestions. Yeah. But yeah, I do want to give folks, because I know there's another presentation that has to go. So maybe one or two more questions if you got them. Otherwise, okay.
Cool. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Willard, in case you didn't meet me already. I am a self-proclaimed DevOps goblin. You'll find me in the Mesh Services channel a lot, and we're here to demo some updates that we've been making to the status page, which is a thing that we have on the website to let people know when stuff breaks. Ooh, uh-oh. Like that. Hey! That was not part of the demo. So let's see. So this is the current status page. I know that that's a confusing title. I'm sorry. I threw these together last night. But this is what the current status page looks like. Basically, it's just a part of our normal website, which is, I believe, a Hugo website hosted on GitHub. And the way that you update this status page is that you have to go to GitHub and make a pull request to update that file on the website and then format it and everything. And it's pretty easy because it's markdown. But it takes a minute because it's GitHub. You have to open the pull request, merge it, and then the site rebuilds and then redeploys, and then the status is updated. So what we've done is built an application to replace this. We looked at different options for doing this, but ultimately we decided to roll our own thing because the people who actually, in the mesh, update this page regularly when things break, wanted it to be through Slack. And we'll get to that in a minute, but this is what,
I think the main reason why our current status page was slow to be updated is there's 5 or 6 people, I think, that have actual admin, have the credentials on that GitHub account to be able to accept. I have one. To be able to accept pull requests. And the other thing is that to update that existing status page, you need to have GitHub, which means you need to have your laptop, you need to have Hugo installed, you need to have a text editor, Visual Studio, or whatever. You need to be able to do a full web page code edit, basically. So the requirements to edit this page was not something that can be done on the fly very easily. Was basically what we were trying to fix.
Yeah. So this is what we've created. It's a fully it's its own website. It runs in its own thing. It's just like a Docker container on an AWS instance. It's its own application, and it's easier to update. We'll do a demo shortly, but it's controlled, like I said, entirely through Slack. It updates instantly as soon as the Slack page, as soon as you, hello? Thank you. As soon as the message is sent in Slack, it's updated. It pulls the new message and updates the status. It's a little bit denser than the previous page. It's just hi, there's a check mark. That means we're good. If you have any more questions, these can answer it. So it's very, very dense and very clear. And there's colors. There's color coding. We'll show you that. It's a little bit more traditional to what modern status pages look like. If you go to GitHub or you go to Slack or you go to Netflix or whatever, they're going to have a status page that looks a little bit more like this rather than instead of a list of posts just explicitly. There's going to be colors. There's going to be a check mark. There's going to be all that jazz. And also it's live right now at that link if you're curious at all. But let's see. Yes, the Slack question.
Yeah, so I guess I think we're going to do a demo later, but this is kind of just a preview of how it works. You can see here's a Slack, screenshot from Slack, and you can see Willard here has added a message and then made a check mark, and that immediately makes the status go live on the website. So he could be on his phone, on the roof, fixing something, and he just immediately Slack that out so that everyone can see it. And you don't have to be on our Slack. So there's a lot of users who don't know about Slack necessarily. So this was just a way of connecting the two things.
One of the main reasons why we wanted to do it, why we decided to do it in Slack, is because anyone who is doing anything with the mesh already has Slack on their phone. They can update it from anywhere, so it's something that's easily accessible to anyone. And also, rather than having a separate credential system for who can update the status page, it's a private channel in Slack, and we can just add or remove anyone from that channel as needed. So it's using a credential system that we already use all the time, and it's just way easier for everyone involved.
Yeah. So that's why Slack. Originally, I was thinking oh man, how are we gonna we're gonna have to set up LDAP and whatever, and then somebody had the genius idea of just using Slack, and I was like, oh, yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? So let's see. Now I think we got a quick demo. I hope it's gonna be quick. Let's see. I hope does that work? We good? Yeah, we're cool. All right, cool. Okay, USB-C cable. Trust me, man.
I can push some things if you want.
All right. No, I got it.
Oh, you're doing right. You've got it posted on your thing.
So here's the page. I've just got this set up in a local dev environment. I wrote this with tools that I hope would be very quick and easy for anybody who didn't want to work on this. It's open source, pull requests, it's accepted, issues are accepted, all that jazz. it should be pretty simple. It's just written in Go. You just download Go and whatever. Anyway, so this is what it looks like normally, right? You got the check mark. It's very nice, very clean, very easy. If you were following something and it's like, oh, what happened to XYZ thing that was happening? Well, you've got some history right there in case you're curious. But then let's say that something breaks, right? You go into our Slack, into a very aptly named status page channel, and all you've got to do is ping the bot with the message. Let's say, a fire in Bushwick has taken out the power to I don't know, a few nodes, right? Members are on site to repair the damage. I don't know. I just totally made that up, right? So you type that out, you press enter, right? The bot notices that you're trying to do that, and it gives you some options, right? So we tried to make it like as intuitive and easy and Slack-y as possible, I guess, to use. So the bot will reply. It'll be like, hey, you're trying to post this message. Do you want to add a color? Do you want to pin it to the top? All that stuff, right? So all you have to do to update the page, and by the way, it's already updated because you made a post, right? It's just right there. But then you can click that box to pin to the top, and then also you can give it a color. So red fire is critical, yellow warning sign is yellow warning, green check mark is green check mark. I hope that's intuitive. And then it literally takes your message and it pins it to the channel, and then you refresh, and it's pinned. There's a big red square that says exactly what you typed, gives you a timestamp that's just pulled from Slack. That's just when the message was made, and it tells you who updated that in case you care. So when people come to this page, that's what they'll see. That's always pinned and whatever, and you can have as many of those as you want as well. So something else broke. Maybe there's a dragon. I don't know. It'll ask, hey, what's up? Do you want to pin it? You say yes, and you can close this as well. Just say, don't bother me. I know what I'm doing. And it'll pin it, and then that doesn't have a color because I told it not to have a color, but that pins, and you can have as many of those as you want. I think we have an arbitrary limit right now set to 5. But then you just give it a react and you give it a color, and it'll it's supposed to be very quick, very easy. Anybody can do it if they have a Slack account and know how reactions work. So hopefully this will be a very easy and quick thing to update. And then when you're done, you can maybe unpin the message, and it'll go back down into this little list. If you want to delete something, you just remove it from the channel, and it goes away, and now it's gone. And then if you want to change the actual color of a status, maybe there was a fire, the fire's out, we're working on it. Everything's not fine yet, but it's going to be. You can actually react yourself and change that color like that. And then when you're like everything's done, everything's finished, you just go ahead and unpin it, and then it'll sit in the history, and we're back to green. And that's it. That's how it works. And if somebody comes to the page and they're like, oh, there's no issues detected, but I don't have internet. Well, there's a link right here. You can go to the support channel on Slack, or you can go directly to our support help form, so that you can report an issue, and then somebody can update the page. And that's it. That's how it works. I guess now there's one more thing I guess to show, and that is that this is a Bootstrap theme put together by Andy. It works very well. Please, sir. And it's mobile responsive, so you can do this all on your phone too, right? That's the cool part, is that Slack works on your phone, the page works on your phone, it looks great on your phone, and that's awesome. Yeah, that's basically it. Anybody have any questions about that? I'm sorry? How do you join the channel? Well, it's a private channel, so you have to be added. Right now, we've got a couple of people in there. If you need it, ask I think, yeah, somebody who's in the channel.
I think the way we'd probably do that, this is open for debate, is throw everyone who's obviously I would say all the install leaders, just throw all the install leaders into the channel, And then anyone else, if maybe there's, because I feel like the people who are like, we have an install leaders channel already, and there's already like we have channels that are just all the install leaders, and I would say that generally everyone who is an install leader is probably the same people who are going to be going out and fixing things. But if there's people that don't do installs that still need access to this, it's just ask and someone will throw you in.
Yeah.
So what?
Read only for the rest?
As far as we know, there isn't a way to do that. How?
You can also just go on the website.
Yeah. How? Yeah.
I'm sorry. What? Hold on. Can we repeat the question?
Oh, the question is, can we make the channel read only for some
Read
people?
only.
And-
There is not a way to do that. But the thing is that like the website and the Slack channel should be literally like one-to-one parity. Like there is nothing in the channel that is not on the site.
We kind of considered adding like more fancy features, like having a hub, like all the hubs have their own little like drop down or something, but it just kind of becomes really difficult with the Slack interface. So it's kind of just meant to be one-to-one.
Yeah.
And, yeah. The basic idea is that the channel is for people who are pushing things to the page, and everyone else just looks at the page.
Yeah. You're not missing.
So
anything.
even if you don't have Slack, just look at the page. I think the main thing that we haven't done yet is right now this is live on status.mesh.nycmesh.net.
Yeah.
That is a live domain that is publicly accessible on the internet, but it's so right now our actual live status page, that's the one that's linked at the top of the website, is nycmesh.net/status. So the main thing is, like, when we feel like this is ready, the final thing we need to do now is just update all those links to point to the new page, and then it is live.
Yeah.
It will replace the / status, something like that.
Yeah. The question was, will it like replace the / status? The answer is yes. We'll probably do it at like status.nycmesh.net or something, and then like 302 people when they go to /status or something. Details.
Yeah. We just need to update the link. I think there's a link at the top of the website, and I don't know if we linked it anywhere else, but basically just update the links and then it's live.
Yeah.
One more.
This is great. It just feels like there should be some way to determine what people are being impacted because our network is so decentralized. It's not going to work like, okay, this Verizon building exploded. These different people are always not going to have internet because that's basically the only way they can get out to the regular network.
It's pairing it with.
Yeah. That's a yeah.
Well, so the status, the idea of like a status page is like it's something that like somebody has to manually go and update to like basically give like announcements, right, to like members, to people who care, right? It's like we've got all these tools, and you know, to your point, like we do actually have like automated monitoring and stuff. I've been working on that for I don't know, a while now. So we do have tools that will alert us to problems, but this is not it. Like this is meant to communicate to members.
I think it's mainly part of this project was mainly we identified that the old status page had a problem and just tried to make a better improvement of that rather than trying to change the whole system. And then it is somewhat reliant on the people who are posting the status messages. You know, previously in the past, our status messages were very, you know, our existing status page, like our status messages were very just kind of, you know, there's a problem, we're working on it. The idea with this is, one, the fact that we can have multiple statuses at once, so we don't need to, it's not just the top thing is the big thing. So we can have, you know, if we have an ongoing issue somewhere, we can leave that status up for 2 weeks while we work on it. And we can still post, oh, big hub is down, things on there. And also we can post, the other thing is that we can post stuff with kind of levels of severity. So, instead of, when, you know, for instance, if we're doing maintenance on a hub and it's like, look, okay, I'm doing maintenance on this hub, I'm going to need to kill like 10 people's internet 10 people, everyone who's connected to this hub is going to have outages over the next couple hours. I can post that to this channel, that morning, the status page that morning. So when someone is at that hub and they, and their internet drops out, they can look at the status page and they'll see, oh, there's maintenance happening. It'll be done at 2 p.m., whatever. Versus having to, so the idea is that we can do a lot more live kind of updates and have a lot more stuff live, but it is somewhat reliant on the people who are posting stuff to provide more context and more details, saying, hey, we're doing maintenance on this hub that is located in this neighborhood. Maybe you list the node numbers that are affected, maybe you don't, maybe you just say, hey, if you're in this neighborhood, please, reach out on support or whatever if you have issues.
It feels like there might be a capability to figure out the node numbers and the potential impact on the entire network, and then be able to distribute that to affected users in a way that is specific to their situation, because that's kind of what makes us different from everybody else. It's like a major outage doesn't necessarily take out everyone in the region. So
That is a thing I have planned for the thing my thing
figured.
does.
Like,
Yeah.
that is a problem that is a problem that exists. There are tools and projects that we are working on to solve that problem.
Okay.
This project is not trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, the current project is great.
I think that's generally the point. I saw one more. Okay.
Oops. Do it.
I pushed a button. Is it on still?
Here.
Question one: if you post a URL, will it make it clickable in the status page?
That's a great question. Yeah, there is there is some like formatting and stuff that needs to, that needs to be done. Let me check.
Should you automatically add the node numbers for like the map link? You post the node number that's like NN713, it'll automatically.
Nice. Yeah. So that way, if you want to post like something that says
that
the following
didn't work.
nodes are affected, you can point to the other tool.
But yes, something that give me a node number.
Good feature request.
240. 1934.
Let's see. I think that will still work even if it's in the. Oh, I have to hold on. You can edit. You can edit the posts. Isn't that nifty? Shut up. There we go. And now, slick.
Yeah. If you do a link, it's a feature request.
Yeah. There's I want to add emojis. I want to add markdown, and I want to add links.
Okay, cool. The second question, I have to remember. It's coming through. Oh, yes. Maybe it could, a potential idea, could we, if it's above a certain severity, maybe cross-post it to the support channel? And then there's a thing where it's like, support bot says,
that's
big red
a good
check mark,
idea.
something is. But then you don't want to do that for everything, right? So you could like maybe put, if it's like yellow and red. Yeah, because then you can have like a maintenance and it goes bad, then you like upgrade it to red, right?
Yeah. Part of that functionality is serviced by like, if you do like at curse status page, hello, things are a little broken, and then, you pin it and then you hit warning and then it'll do that. But then, oh, things are really broken. Uh-oh. Just change the reaction.
No, I mean, that's cool, but I was thinking about, like cross-posting it to support.
Yes.
Because you know what happens, like when there's a support issue, there's an onslaught in support.
Yeah.
People are like, miner's down too. And you're like,
I think
there's a thing.
That is a good point, because I think the areas where basically our kind of workflow, like people who lost their internet go to two places. If they know how to use Slack, they post in #support. If they don't know how to use Slack, they either look at this or they send us an email. Yeah. So we need to catch them. We need to catch them somewhere in those three paths, and hopefully they don't go to email because that's the slowest method. So, say what? Yeah. So.
we really need to support non-technical people that don't use Slack. So but when you say email is the slowest thing, we have to speed up email then.
Also, this is probably like a small subset of the actual support channel stuff, so it wouldn't be like spammy, I don't think, to just
I think-
copy everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you only do it on a certain level and above, right?
Yeah, the other thoughts that came up during this other thoughts that came up during this design was we were thinking of maybe like a lot of websites just use a Twitter handle, and that's their they have a Twitter handle and that's their support thing. Or we were like, okay, should we try it on Mastodon or whatever? Like, the reason we ended up going with this is it's our own system and we kind of have full control of it. It's not hosted on the mesh, so that if the mesh goes down, this will keep working. But it's not reliant on it's not reliant on Twitter or any other main messaging platform. Yeah, I mean, an option that could be employed, I would say, is in theory we could probably integrate this with some sort of RSS feed or something, but once again that's a technical level of skill. So to be honest, just a website and we just tell everyone,
There's only so many buckets you can fill.
Yeah,
There's really only so many buckets you can fill. Again,
Yeah.
This is a what license did I use? This is a GPL project. So if you are unfortunate enough to know how to write Go, then you can open a PR and I will accept it. I guess I'll be adding features to this as I have time and if people demand it. But yeah.
It is really easy to set up. Like, I had never used Go and I helped do it. So,
Yeah. Go's the new Java. Oh God, help me! I've been writing Go for N years.
I think that's that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
The pizza should be here in a few minutes, and we've got beer.
Cool. Thank you, folks.
Is that it?